Do you ever feel like you're doing everything right, but somehow you're still not where you thought you'd be by now? Maybe you've got the degree. You've been showing up, working hard, even taking on more than your share. You're the one people depend on at work, maybe even at home too. And yet something feels stuck. Not terrible, but not great either. Just this lingering sense that there's more and you're missing it. Like you followed the rules, but the reward didn't show up. If that hits close to home, you're definitely not alone. So many smart, capable people in their 30s and 40s are quietly wrestling with this. I've seen it in friends, coaching clients, and to be honest, I've felt it myself. You think I should be further along by now. I should feel more confident. I should at least know what I'm doing. But instead, there's this quiet confusion, this wondering if maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere. But here's the truth. It's not about your intelligence. It's not about your work ethic. It's not even about your job title. It's about these invisible traps that even the most driven people fall into without realizing it. Subtle patterns that slowly eat away at your momentum, your joy, your progress, and you don't see them clearly because you're in them. In this video, I want to talk to you about 4 of those traps. The kinds of traps that catch smart people precisely because they're smart, because they care, because they're trying to do things the right way. And I'm not just going to point them out. We'll also talk about how to avoid them, how to shift out of them with intention, and how to finally start building a career that feels like it fits you. Let's start with one of the sneakiest ones, being productive but not intentional. You know that feeling when your to-do list is overflowing. Your calendar looks like a game of Tetris, and you're always busy. But you don't feel like you're actually getting anywhere? That's this trap. We confuse motion with progress, activity with achievement. Because it feels good to check things off, to stay busy, to say yes. Especially in work culture today, where busyness is worn like a badge of honor. The person who stays the latest, who answers emails fastest, who never takes a real break. But here's the catch. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're building something meaningful. It's so easy to fall into a rhythm where your time and energy are being pulled in 10 directions by meetings that don't need to happen, tasks that don't align with your goals, and expectations that aren't even yours. And because you're capable, you keep up. You keep saying yes. You keep adding more. Until one day you realize you've been building someone else's version of success. I remember a client who once told me, "I've built this whole ladder, but it's leaning against the wrong wall." She was high up in her field, well-respected, good money, but miserable. Because somewhere along the way, she stopped asking why she was doing all of it. She just kept doing. The fix isn't to stop working or to drop everything. It's to pause and re-anchor. To start asking, what actually matters to me? Where do I want this to go? And if you don't have a clear answer right away, that's okay. Even asking the question already starts to break the trap. Here's another one. Overvaluing stability, undervaluing growth. This one hits deep, especially if you've had to hustle hard to get where you are. When you finally land the steady job, the benefits, the sense of financial security, it feels like you should just be grateful that you've arrived, that asking for more is risky or selfish, so you stay, even if it's draining you, even if you're bored or quietly resenting it. You keep telling yourself, this is what I wanted, right? I shouldn't complain. But let me tell you something that took me years to learn. Stability without growth slowly becomes a cage. And you won't notice it at first because it's padded with comfort and predictability. But deep down, you start to feel restless. You might scroll job boards during lunch but never apply. You might fantasize about starting something new, but immediately talk yourself out of it with reasons like, it's not the right time, I can't afford to risk it, or I'm too old to pivot now. You start shrinking your dreams to fit your current circumstances, instead of expanding your courage to explore new ones. And again, this doesn't mean quitting your job tomorrow. It just means waking up the part of you that still wants to grow, the part that's hungry for learning, for challenge, for something that lights you up again. That spark you felt when you were younger, it's not gone. It's just been buried under bills, expectations, and fear. Sometimes growth looks like a big leap, but often it starts with something small. Taking a class, reaching out to someone in a field you're curious about, volunteering for a new kind of project at work. The point is to start, to stop waiting for perfect timing and start reclaiming your own momentum. And let's talk about a third trap while we're here. Maybe the most heartbreaking one: tying your worth to your role. If you've ever introduced yourself by your job title before your name, or felt completely lost during a career break, you've probably fallen into this without even realizing it. It's so easy to believe that your value comes from what you do, especially in a society that rewards output and labels: manager, director, founder, employee of the month. When things are going well, it feels great, but when they're not, if you're laid off, burned out, or just unhappy in your role, it can shake you to the core. You start asking not just, "What do I do?" but "Who am I without this?" I once talked to a dad who took a few months off work to help his partner with a newborn, and he told me, "I thought this would be a break, but I've never felt more anxious, like I was disappearing." He wasn't. He was redefining. But no one ever teaches us how to separate our identity from our occupation. It's just assumed that what we do is who we are. But you are more than your resume. You are more than your output. And the more you remember that, the more freedom you'll have to explore paths that actually fit your life, not just your LinkedIn profile. You'll feel less pressure to prove yourself constantly. You'll start making choices from a place of alignment instead of fear. And honestly, you'll start showing up more powerfully because you'll be grounded in who you are, not just what you do. Let's pause here, because I know this can bring up a lot. Maybe some of these traps are familiar to you. Maybe you're realizing just how much energy you've been pouring into things that no longer serve you, or maybe never did. But there's something incredibly hopeful in that awareness. It means you're ready. You're not stuck. You're waking up. Let's keep going. There's something powerful about realizing you're not broken. The system just never taught you how to live and work in alignment with your real values. It's not your fault if you've fallen into these traps. Most of us do, especially during our busiest, most demanding years, the 30s and 40s, when you're juggling a job, maybe raising kids, managing a home, trying to be a decent partner, a decent friend, and somehow still find time to breathe. You're pulled in so many directions that sometimes survival becomes the goal. Not purpose, not passion, just making it through. But now that you're here, watching this, thinking about it, feeling it, there's space to choose something different. Let's talk about another trap, one that's incredibly common, especially among people who are used to being the responsible one, the go-to person, the fixer. Trap number 4, confusing loyalty with self-sacrifice. This one stings a little, because loyalty is a beautiful thing to your team, your boss, your company, even your clients. But too often, what gets labeled as loyalty is really just over-functioning. And somewhere along the line, we started believing that being a good employee means constantly putting ourselves last. You've seen it, maybe lived it. You skip lunch because someone else needs something. You cancel your vacation because there's a deadline. You stay late, again, because you don't want to let anyone down. And when people thank you for being so dedicated, it feels good, but also kind of hollow. Because deep down, a little voice is asking, who's taking care of me? Here's the truth. Sacrificing your well-being for a company that would replace you in 2 weeks is not noble. It's not loyalty, it's conditioning. And I don't say that to make you feel guilty. I say it because you deserve better. Your energy is not unlimited. Your time is not infinite. And your worth does not increase the more you abandon yourself for the sake of the job. I once spoke with a woman, mid-40s, absolutely brilliant, worked in healthcare. She told me how she hadn't taken more than a long weekend off in 5 years. Not because she couldn't, but because she felt guilty, like the world would fall apart if she wasn't there. Then one day, she got sick, really sick, and everything kept moving without her. It hurt, not just physically, but emotionally, to realize the machine she was keeping alive didn't even pause. And she told me, that's when I knew. I'd been giving everything to something that wouldn't have done the same for me. It doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you care for yourself too, that you stop proving your loyalty through burnout, that you set boundaries, not because you're lazy, but because you're valuable. You are not a machine. You are not just a role or a resource. You're a human being. And being loyal to your own health, your dreams, your family, that's just as important as any performance review. And while we're here, let's look at one more subtle trap: waiting for permission to pivot. This one is especially tricky, because if you're like a lot of people I've worked with, you probably believe in the idea of earning your next step. You think, I can't make a change until I'm fully ready, until I've done more, until someone tells me I can. You wait for a sign, for external validation, for your boss to say, you're ready for leadership, for someone to offer you a new path, for life to slow down long enough to figure it all out. But the truth is, that permission, it rarely comes. No one's going to tap you on the shoulder and say, hey, it's time for you to do something that excites you again. No one's going to email you an invitation to grow. And it's not because they don't care. It's because they're not you. They don't know what you're capable of. They don't know what's burning in your chest that wants out. They don't know the ideas you've been sitting on, the restlessness you've been silencing, the version of yourself that you can feel just under the surface, waiting to rise. You do. But when you've spent your whole adult life trying to do what's right, what's expected, what's stable, you forget that you're allowed to want something more. You don't need anyone's permission to grow, to pivot, to start over, to try something different. You don't need to be perfect before you begin. You just need to begin. I remember a guy in his late 30s. He'd been in corporate finance since his 20s. Good job, good money, respected. But he always had a quiet passion for design. For years, he kept it in the someday file. Until one day, he decided to freelance part-time on weekends. Just one client. Then another. Fast forward 2 years. He didn't quit everything and burn bridges. He just started giving himself permission to explore. And now, he's running his own small creative agency, making less money, but living with so much more peace. And every time I talk to him, he says the same thing. I didn't realize how unhappy I was until I stopped asking for permission to be happy. That stuck with me. Because honestly, how often do we do that? Wait for a sign that we're allowed to change or leave or want more. What if the sign is you? The restlessness, the fatigue, the dream you keep coming back to, the way your chest tightens every Sunday night or your mind wanders during meetings. What if that is the sign? There's a different way to work, a different way to live. And no, it's not always simple or fast or easy, but it is possible. And it starts with getting honest about the traps we're in and deciding we're worth the effort to climb out. You don't have to blow up your life. You just have to stop sleeping through it. Let's keep going. Because if you've made it this far, I know one thing for sure. You're ready. So here we are, sitting with all the stuff that's been bubbling under the surface. Maybe you've recognized a few of these traps in your own life. The overproductivity that leads nowhere, the clinging to comfort that stifles growth, the loyalty that slowly erodes your energy, or the quiet waiting for someone else to tell you it's okay to choose something better. And I want to pause and just say this. If any of that resonated, that's not a sign of failure. That's a sign of awareness. And awareness is a powerful, underrated kind of freedom. Because once you see the pattern, you can stop being controlled by it. And I know, change sounds overwhelming, especially in the middle of everything else. You're probably thinking, how am I supposed to reinvent my career when I've got a mortgage, kids, aging parents, a boss who needs everything yesterday? Let me tell you something really important. You don't need to flip your life upside down to shift your direction. You just need to start making aligned decisions, one by one, quietly, consistently, thoughtfully. It's not about throwing away the life you've built. It's about building a life that includes you again. Because here's something nobody really tells you when you're growing up. You're allowed to outgrow your career without hating it. You can be grateful for the stability your job gave you and still want something different. You can respect your coworkers and still feel like the role isn't lighting you up anymore. You can appreciate the experience, all the skills, the lessons, the years, and still say, I think I'm ready for more. That's not betrayal. That's evolution. And here's the part that gets really personal. Because what you're working through, this tension between responsibility and fulfillment, between safety and soul, it's not just about your job, it's about how you see yourself. Somewhere along the way, a lot of us started measuring our worth by how much we produce, or how much we earn, or how well we meet other people's expectations. Especially if you grew up in a household where achievement was praised, or mistakes weren't safe, or rest was called laziness. But now you're grown, and you get to rewrite that story. You get to say, my time matters. My energy is worth protecting. My identity is bigger than any job title, and I don't need to prove anything to anyone anymore, including myself. You're not stuck. You're not too late. You're just in a moment of reflection, and that moment matters. I've seen people in their 40s shift from exhausted corporate roles to creative businesses they love. I've seen people in their 30s return to school, start new paths, even rediscover talents they buried for decades. I've seen parents completely reimagine their work-life balance so they could actually enjoy the lives they were working so hard to provide. And not one of them got there by knowing exactly what to do. They just started. Scared, unsure, imperfect, but determined to stop waiting for someone else to fix it. If you're listening to this and nodding along, even if you're scared, even if it feels far away, that means something in you is ready. Something in you is saying, enough. I want to feel alive in my work again. I want to feel like I'm becoming more of myself, not less. So, what now? Maybe today it just means carving out 20 minutes to reflect. Not scroll, not numb, just sit with yourself. Ask, where am I giving too much? Where have I been silent about what I want? What part of me is hungry for more meaning, more peace, more challenge, more purpose? Maybe it means updating your resume, even if you don't hit apply just yet. Maybe it means starting that podcast, writing that blog post, messaging that person you admire. Maybe it means talking to your partner honestly about how work is affecting your health, your moods, your sense of self. The how will unfold. The first step is deciding you're worth the effort, worth the discomfort, worth the time it takes to rediscover what you truly want, not what you were told to want. And I want to remind you of something. Your value doesn't come from how much you do. It comes from who you are. Your worth is not up for negotiation. It doesn't go up when you succeed or down when you're struggling. You're not behind. You're not failing. You're simply in the middle of becoming. We all are. So if no one's told you lately, you're allowed to change. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to dream again, even in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and beyond. And if something in this video spoke to you, if it lit a small fire inside, I'd love to hear from you. Tell me in the comments. What's one thing you've outgrown that you're ready to leave behind? If you found this helpful, give it a like. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more conversations like this, real, honest, empowering, hit subscribe. We're building something here. Not just a channel, but a place where it's safe to be human. And remember, your story isn't stuck. You're not too late. You're just getting started.